Elon has been chatting about energy, and people have been very interested in what he has to say. Not only has he played a big role in the popularity of electric vehicles and transition away from fossil fuels at least to run our automobiles. I think this is why it's so important what he's saying now specifically, that he's saying, hey, we gotta really look at alternative power sources, or not alternatives to electricity, or old school technologies. Essentially, he said. I mean, this particular tweet is talking about nuclear power. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, it is now extremely obvious that Europe should restart dormant nuclear power stations. Dormant, so they're sitting there. I guess Chernobyl happens. People get nervous about nuclear power.
Fukushima as well.
And so they just shut these things down and try to transition to alternative energy production, but then come to realize, okay, nothing is really that effective right now at scale for what we really need. And hence the reliance on foreign energy like Russian energy, which then leads you down this path of reliance. And even though maybe there might be a political disconnect, what good is it when there's energy reliance? Mm-hmm. Right? What good is your dispute when you're heavily relying on these energy imports? It puts you in a really tough spot to not have any degree of energy independence, and not every country has the same capabilities when it comes to natural resources, nor may they even want to extract these natural resources given recent developments in environmental perspectives. But anyway, he says this is critical to national and international security. For those who mistakenly think that this is a radiation risk, pick what you think is the worst location. I will travel there and eat locally grown food on TV. I did this in Japan many years ago, shortly after Fukushima. Radiation risk is much, much lower than most people believe. Also, nuclear is vastly better for global warming than burning hydrocarbons for energy. And, of course, the top comment after that is, what about Chernobyl? Isn't nuclear power too dangerous? And we have the back and forth, your typical back and forth about, no, it's not as dangerous as they say. And then others saying it's not worth it. You're going to have a dispute about it. But if you look at the world right now, and you look at the situation and the threats that exist in the world right now, and you look at the transition, people's mindset, the things that we're paying attention to move from COVID into warfare, and you just look at the general public and the things that they're concerned with, afraid about, and you realize human beings truly have tremendous potential to screw things up. We have tremendous potential to obliterate ourselves quickly. If we just decide that that's our mutually assured destruction. Mm-hmm. One guy, one button, one weapon, and the domino effect kicks off. And then it's like, oh, wow, that really brings into question so many of our activities and policies around all these things which had a longer, larger window to them, where you were sitting and thinking and trying to prepare for 50 or 100 years from now, which, okay, fine. But here's your guy who was doing that. Here's your guy who was trying to electrify the automobile and had been shouting about renewable energy, have been shouting about fossil fuels, and he's saying, no, circumstances have changed. Mm-hmm. Humans, politics, countries, nations, borders, conflict, it all has the potential to immediately have shift our focus, and it also immediately exposes vulnerabilities in our investments and our perspective on things. And you go, whoops, we're not there yet. And if things had remained peaceful, our policy may have been different. But since things are no longer peaceful, at least in this region, and the effect of that, and sanctions, and the consequences of such things, there's a reevaluation that takes place. And it has a lot of people thinking, once again, as I'm sure people have in the past, it has a lot of people thinking about what true energy independence looks like for their nation, for their group, and then whatever advantages are afforded by not needing to import so much energy to exist, to sustain.
Just a quick question. With these tweets here, do you think Elon would be more effective if he talks to other countries, like ministers, about these problems?
Well, I saw him on Zoom with Zelensky. So I don't know that he necessarily isn't doing that. He might be. Like, he has, if you think about his investments, right, he's done a gigafactory in Berlin, right, in Germany. So you can't do a building like that without meeting politicians over there. So I presume he would have these connections and likely be capable of doing it. Because if you have connections in Germany, then you have connections to the EU, and you can. But it's not easy to flip this switch either, right? You would have to go into these facilities and start. There would be all kinds of checks and balances to figure out if this is a thing. I'm not saying that they can't do it. What I'm saying is there would be a whole procedure to it. To restart nuclear power stations. But he's been a nuclear guy for a long time. And he's my perspective on him is that he's big on the idea of energy independence, or some degree of it, and particularly not relying on certain powers for these things.